Today's podcast episode is sponsored by Let's Go. Let's Go is a 501c3 nonprofit organization committed to generating opportunities for youth and young adults through STEM education and workforce development. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Let's Grow Together podcast presented by Let's Go Boys and Girls. I am Ray McKetty, joined as always by my co-host,
Anna Ross.
And today we have a really special treat for you. We have our friend and colleague on here, Jamin Jackson, who's going to be talking to us about her entrepreneurial journey, y'all. So give it up for Jamin. And yeah, let's get into it.
Welcome, Jamin. Thank you so much for being with us today. Do you just kind of want to start out by telling us a little bit about your business and kind of your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. By the way, before that, I'll just give a little bit of a background of myself as well. I'm Korean, born and raised in Kenya. I'm currently the co-founder and president of a nonprofit organization called Getaway Growth, and we give opportunities for students of underserved communities the access to travel abroad. I'm also the founder of a startup athleisure wear brand called Jamin Collections. I was recently based out of Los Angeles. For 6 years, I was pursuing my master's in entrepreneurship and innovation at USC. Graduated last year. I was also a personal trainer for Equinox, fitness clubs, and LinkedIn. And prior to LA, I was also living in South Korea, teaching English as a second language. And now I'm actually with Let's Go as the program director. I'm a nature, music, and travel lover. So that's a little bit about myself.
That's all?
Yeah, it's a long story, but I was trying to shorten it,
No, we love
Condensed a whole life into just a couple sentences. I was impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full life, ladies and gentlemen. Jamin has lived a full life. Yeah. Hannah, do you want to take our first question for Jamin?
Yeah, Jamin, do you just want to tell us a little bit about kind of what being an entrepreneur is to you and maybe go a little bit more into your business and kind of what that looks like for you? Give everybody a little background.
Okay. So first off, I do want to say I feel like an entrepreneur to me is somebody who would possess a high level of grit. And I feel this grit comes from understanding your why. I feel that when you clearly understand your why, you're able to kind of have this indomitable perseverance and commitment that you would need as far as a journey for entrepreneurship goes. Because I think you have to take big risks, be able to compromise. You would also have to be able to face failure and then have a mindset of being able to continue. And the only ways that you could do that is really understanding why and the purpose behind what you're doing every day. And then I also do want to say that the idea of entrepreneurship, I think, has changed over time. And to me, I feel that I do want to mention, because this is a little bit STEM related, that I also feel nowadays that an entrepreneur or a startup founder is like being a scientist. And that's because, we hypothesize, we make a hypothesis on what we think is an opportunity or a need to a community. And then we go and create a product or a solution to the problem. And then from there, we go and experiment, test, run it through customers, pivot as needed, and then we kind of see if our value proposition meets those needs. So I do want to say, I do feel that nowadays entrepreneurship is also changing into the direction of being a scientist as well. And then as far as my business goes, I have a startup athleisure wear brand. It's called Jamin Collections. Currently, it is where activewear meets art. So I know I mentioned pivoting. So it's been about 3 to 4 years now that I've been running Jamin Collections. At the very beginning, Jamin Collections was more so of I would say, I would curate a lot of the collections, but now it's more so me designing coming up with the different styles and everything. But then I also have my customers engaged in the sense where they get to pick the design and style through a voting process that I have, and which I'll actually mention later on in this podcast. But or that's the sustainability aspect that I do have. But yeah, it's kind of gone towards that direction. And then I also do collaborate with artists. And then I also saw a gap in the industry where I felt that when it comes to athleisure wear, a lot of times, a lot of the athletes that are being sponsored by a lot of activewear brands are mainly in conventional sports like, soccer, basketball. But I found that, I felt that there's a lot of artistic athletes, kind of like those who do hula hoop dancing to things like ballet or ice skating or ice dancers. They're never really highlighted. So that's one of the things that I do is I collaborate with a lot of women in those fields. And yeah, and then I'm able to also help or like support them in what they do as well. And then I actually do like to collaborate with them directly. I don't like to go through different agencies because I feel like a lot of the agencies try to take a lot of the, I guess, funding away from them. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. There's
Of
so
Yeah.
many
course.
layers to your business, which is really fascinating. I'm excited to dig in more.
Yeah. And I really hadn't heard it described that way before when you were saying or likening the um, path of an entrepreneur to that of a scientist. But when you broke it down like that, I was like, oh, okay, she might be talking about something. Like this is a I was seeing exactly what you're saying. I was like, yeah, you really do have to like you come up with a hypothesis or what was it you called it a value proposition? Uh,
Yes, the value proposition. And
yeah.
essentially it'd be the product, your product meeting the needs of your audience or customers.
Which requires observation too, right? Which is also part of you just as you were just describing the scientific method and how that can how it bleeds over into entrepreneurship. So it's a really it's really interesting. I guess on top of that, I guess the question we have following that is if you could tell us about your pathway into entrepreneurship, right?
Who,
Why athleisure? Why art? Why design? Like it's great. It's like what is that why? Where does that come from?
my why stems back to the very beginnings of my entrepreneurial journey where I was born and raised, a whole story. So I can share that a little bit. So I would say that entrepreneurship has always been a part of my life where I watched, both my parents were doing businesses back in Kenya. So I was always watching them growing up, having their own schedule. So I was always aspired to run or start my own business. And I'll say that my first entrepreneurial journey was when I was in Korea teaching English as a second language. And at that time, I was working with this education management firm. And what they would do is they would essentially help bring in one-on-one students for me, and we'll have one-on-one English lessons. And what I had seen at that time was a lot of these educational management firms were only targeting English teaching. So, but I came to find out that there was also a need for French lessons or Spanish lessons. So what I ended up doing was I teamed up with a couple of friends and my brother as well at that time, and we came up with a language management firm where we essentially connected foreign language teachers with students that were needed. But eventually, I had to go do my undergrad, and this is where my design portion came in. My undergrad was in computer animation and visual effects, so that's where my design or passion for design came in. So But once after I did that, and while doing my, design degree, my second entrepreneurial journey was I started making t-shirts with a friend of mine. And this was more of a fun project we wanted to do, but we were both into fashion and things like that. So we started printing these shirts with bow ties to make them classy. So we'll take like plain t-shirts and then, or like plain tank tops, and then we'll have bow ties on them and print. And then they could have a jacket over it so it look a little classy. But that was, that's my earlier journey back then. And when I think about it now, it's a little funny. I don't think it wasn't serious, but it was just more so for fun. And I feel like it was a great learning experience in terms of e-commerce. So I was selling at that time, it was mainly eBay that we had, platforms like eBay and Amazon. So I got to experience what it was like to sell on Amazon and eBay. And then I also started organizing a lot of themed events, community events, where I was building a community and bringing local Koreans with expats living in Korea. So I would do like speed networking events or parties, things like that. But fast forward, after my journey in Korea, I moved to LA, where I started my personal training journey. I had completely done a career flip. I was kind of tired of being in front of a computer as a computer animator in a studio for 12 to 24 hours in front of a computer. That was not my personality. I'm a very active person. So I decided, and I loved fitness. And a lot of my friends said they were very inspired by my journey because I would always, post about my fitness journey. And so I decided to get into personal training. But it was the pandemic where I had lost my job as a trainer. And so at that time, I went virtual. And then I started to realize that training clients did take a lot of time. And then I wanted to do something that would give me a little bit more of a return on investment with my time. And that's where Jamin Collections came in. I had this idea that, oh, what if I started my own activewear brand? And one of the reasons why I wanted to start that is because I spent a lot of hours at Equinox, and being a fitness trainer, I was always wearing black leggings. So I always had to order leggings. But the problem with these leggings was either they were see-through, they would fall out when I work out, or they just wouldn't fit right. And and then also a lot of them just, I don't know what it was, but a lot of the pairs, I went through so many of them, I can say, and it just wasn't fitting right. So what I decided to do is just, curate some of these collections and yeah, start off with white labeling. And so I started looking at, I think it was Alibaba sites, things like that. And then I started ordering samples. And then based on those samples, I chose some of the ones where the quality was better, the fit seemed right for working out, just things like that. So that's where I had started. And then I also was very grateful at the time during the pandemic where I was still able to continue and pursue my passion in fitness. So I also wanted to give back at that time. So, and the reason why I wanted to give back is also because I was born and raised in Kenya, as I said, and I feel that growing up in Kenya and seeing poverty firsthand, I just have always appreciated life and the opportunities that I have been given. So I've always wanted to give back to the community in that sense. And so I wanted to kind of use this as a way to also give back. So what I started doing is, as I sold every piece or legging, I would donate $1.50 to organizations that meant to me. So I've donated to Young Women's Survival Collision. That's one where young women face cancer, and that really resonated with me because my mom went through breast cancer when I was 16. I also gave back to Food on Foot LA, and then there was a time in Christmas of 2000 22 or 21, where I put hygiene bags together and I sent it to Kenya because, a fun fact, but menstrual cycle is a taboo in Kenya or places like in Africa where a lot of women can't attend school when they're on their monthly menstrual cycles. They can't play any sports at that time. So I kind of wanted to support and go back to my community and where I'm from. So with that, I put together some hygiene packets with sanitary towels and tampons, and I donated about 200 of them. And yeah, so that was the beginnings of my journey with Jamin Collections and why I started that.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Involved, to say the least. But it seems
Yes.
like as you, everything seems like it kind of fell into place along your journey. And you, what I really appreciate about hearing your story, Jamin, is like you paid attention to how life was kind of shaping your journey and like saying yes to life, right? And saying, you know, wait, I have this design background, but I also love exercise and fitness and, you know, and so on and so forth. And then just, you know, it just that leading into or combining into, you know, J-Min Collections, but then also adding in the component of service and giving back to elevate it to this higher purpose, right? Of this is connected to people like I am because, you know, you are, right? So love that. Yeah, and I'll let Hannah, if you want to
Can I
jump,
add something to that? And,
please.
it was so at that time, I also had gone through a mentorship developmental program, and I would tie this in better. But the reason why I say at the very beginning, knowing your why is important is because during that journey is when I found out or explored my why. And it was more so stemming from Kenya, where, because I saw a lot of kids growing up who weren't able, or just people, and after also having traveled to a lot of different countries, there are a lot of people who don't get that same opportunity like us. And yeah, I realized that for me, I felt that my why is doing it for people who can't. So that has just driven me ever since. And knowing that why has always made me appreciate life more with the opportunities I do get and then be able to seize that. So, yeah.
Love that.
That's such a powerful message, too, of your why being bigger than just an interest in pursuing fashion or liking certain things. Your why really feels like it's a part of you, and it's you leading yourself, and that's a really cool way to think about it. Thank you for kind of framing it that way.
Of course.
You've mentioned a bunch of kind of different tie-ins already with STEM, with fitness, which I personally would consider a part of STEM, um, with a lot of different pieces all kind of leading to where you are now. So, can you talk a little bit about the different ways that STEM shows up in running your business, in creating your designs, your materials, all those kind of pieces? Because it sounds like there's a lot of technology involved, there's a lot of scientific and engineering method involved, there's engineering of clothes, like there's a lot of STEM pieces that go into this. So, can you talk a little bit more about kind of how you see STEM fitting in?
Sure. Um, I'll also give a background to this, but after running Jamin Collections for 6 months, I realized that, my product wasn't unique because I would, just do white labeling. So I just thought maybe I needed to pivot a little bit and make Jamin Collections more unique. What is that thing about Jamin Collections where customers would find it unique and be able to come back? So And then at that time, during the pandemic, I think there was a huge increase in the demand for sustainability, which made me decide on exploring sustainability. So I actually had to take a step back and pause, with Jamin Collections. I went on a pause, and then I started to educate myself further into, because I don't have a fashion background. So I needed to learn, where is this fashion source? Where are materials coming from? The fabrics. So I started to educate myself on plastics. So things like what our clothes are made of. So polyester, nylon, things like that. And I started learning, the effects of it in the overall environment. I really did go through a rabbit hole where I even started, how are plastics made in the first place. So like going from crude oil all the way to the factories where the plastics are generated. So all of that was just educational to me. And I wanted to learn that just because I needed to, I wanted to understand my own, when it comes to my own brand, I thought I needed to be knowledgeable in the field and just learning about the different fabrics. And I came to realize, so one of the greatest lessons during this and takeaways was I just felt that obviously, for one, I feel that there is an overproduction in the fashion industry. And then another thing that stood out to me was that everything that we need for our survival kind of depends directly or indirectly to our natural environment. And so when we do take something out from our ecosystem, it either affects something, within our ecosystem or eventually would affect our ecosystem. So just by knowing that about the environment, I felt that, if there's a lot of new, when it comes to sustainability, I feel that there's so many new um, fabrics that are sustainable that they've come up with. So things like nowadays they're using kelp or bamboo. So for me, in like what I learned, I just felt like taking something away from nature because it will eventually affect something. I didn't want to go in that direction. So I started looking up more fabrics that are maybe regenerated. So I came across Econyle. So that is regenerated nylon. And so I found this Italian firm, and they're called Aquafil. And they're the ones who essentially take nylon fishing nets from the ocean. So they are partners with this one initiative called Healthy Seas. And what they do is they have scuba divers go and pick up all the nylon fishing nets. And then from there, they take the nylon fishing nets and then also take nylon carpets from landfills, all the nylon waste, and then they regenerate that nylon to a more, I would say, virgin form of it. And so it kind of creates a loop to the material being used, and it can always be regenerated, that nylon. So I thought with pre-existing waste that we already have, that would be essentially made sense to me. So that's why I reached out to them, and then I decided that this is the fabric I want to use, makes most sense to me. And I felt that it was important for obviously customers to know where the material comes from. So I also started to educate my customers on that journey as well. So I also had my customers go through that journey where I was educating them on the fabric and where it came from. And then I also started to look at my products and start to see also the journey of this product, like where it's getting sourced from. Because I don't know if you've watched or, I don't know if you remember, there was a time where there was a factory in India when it came to corporate responsibility and things like that. There was a whole thing within the fashion industry. So just being mindful of things like that, um, I started to kind of also explore more of where my production was coming from. So in a whole loop, once again, was where the production was coming from to how I deliver my products to where is, how am I going to, or whatever that is being delivered to now also going back to that loop and being produced and things like that. So along that circular journey, I started to explore my sources. And so I ended up with this production production company where this was in Bali, Indonesia, and they had the Econile fabric. And what I loved about them was that they were paying wages more than the minimum wage of Bali. So they do that, but they also donate to their communities and give back as well. So I started from there, and then I also started to think more about my delivery. Once my products are in, how do I deliver it to customers? So even that, before I would just gather boxes, at that time I was more personal with my boxes and how I deliver the products. So I would just put anything, but now I was more self-conscious on, what does the delivery also look like? So I started adding, these personalized cards, the thank you personalized cards. I chose seed paper, where essentially they'll be able to grow that seed paper and turn into a plant. So those are my tags. They're made out of seed paper. Then I have recycled craft boxes, and then I have compostable packaging as well. So that would be for delivery. And then and then I'm also giving back to community, the $1.50 that I usually do. So in all sources, I just wanted to be very holistic with when it comes to sustainability. So where STEM comes in is I would say, for one, is the fabric in itself. It might not be direct, but the fabric in itself. When it comes to designing, another lesson that I had learned during my entrepreneurial journey was when it comes to inventory. One time I had, ordered a bunch of inventory which didn't get sold. And that was my learning lesson and mistake, where I learned that, okay, maybe I thought that collection would go well, but it wasn't. So it should be more about your customers. And that's where I kind of learned that where customers are more important. So with that being said, and also overproduction in the fashion industry being a huge problem these days, and the pollution, I thought that, maybe I could start having my customers vote. So I started, where I would work with the production team and then gather all the, the trendy styles and designs. And so I'd put those styles and designs in place, and then I would have my customers go in, and essentially they would vote on what style and design to bring on to each collection. So that's where the design aspect comes in. And then one of the collections that I came up with is a limited collection, where I designed a collection with a little bit of inspired by my background. I can show it to you later, but it's one. But yeah, so that's where design comes in. And then there's obviously that's tech, a little bit of tech also. So I would say those are the biggest STEM components within my business.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh my goodness gracious.
That's a lot of things.
No, it's so impressive. It's incredibly impressive, because we've talked about like your business here and there before in the past, Jamin, but like the degree to which you are committed to sourcing your stuff holistically and like your commitment to sustainability, and your willingness to be a beginner or a student or a learner, right? And working yourself through the grace of, even just pausing production of of your business so you could learn more and dive in and come out more knowledgeable and a content expert. Like that is the kind of grit and commitment that a scientist and an entrepreneur, that's what would take them very far. So yeah, that was just a joy to quite the journey for sure. But I was just like, oh, and then what? And then what? And on that note, what kind of advice for young people who are interested in starting their own business would you give? Like if they're listening to this podcast and like, wow, I've always thought about it, but I don't even know where I'd start. Like what would you say to someone who is listening and might be interested in the entrepreneurial path, but they don't know where to get their start?
I would say, for one, and I'll go back to the why. And by the way, this comes from Simon Sinek also, and he says his best, but I'll preach on that, double preach on that. But I think coming out of a little bit more self-awareness and knowing your why would be one. And then I would also say just be prepared for the unexpected, because the entrepreneurial journey, you have, it'll be a lot of up and downs. And, especially at the lowest, there's times where you just want to quit everything, which I have gone through, where there are times I just want to quit everything, do nothing. So I think once you understand your why, especially on those lowest days, it would help you bring you back up and have a, more stronger mindset and being able to see your vision and bigger picture of things. So I'll say that. And then I will say that entrepreneurship, I think you have to be very patient as well. It's not an easy process where you know your customers already. And once again, it's a science experiment where you're going to have to constantly change things, pivot, you know, um, customers will surprise you where maybe, this is not what they want, or this is what you want. So I think like one of the things is to be able to adapt to that. And then I would also say one other thing is to also be updated with the industries that you want to get into. I think it's very important to kind of see what is going on in that industry that you want to get into and the future of that, so that you're understanding, you can look a little bit further than just what's current. So knowing what you have in the future or what's coming in the future, you're able to also adjust to what's coming into the future, especially with new technologies coming nowadays. So for example, like before, I would personally ship my boxes, but now because of fulfillment companies, I'm able to just send my inventory, and whatever orders come in, they're able to handle those orders, which saves me a lot of time. And so, yeah, just kind of looking at things like that. And then also having a little bit more of, you know, projecting your finances and what are your financial goals for when it comes to the business. If you're, are you looking to, I would say this is one thing is I think like success to everybody means something different, especially when it comes to even a business, a business success, being successful, someone like me, I think I'm satisfied when I also give back to community. But then there's some who want, more money or profit, they say. So it just depends on what you define as success, but also knowing that, I think, is important when starting your own business.
That's really great advice. And I think things that maybe people wouldn't have thought about, that there's a lot of layers beyond just a great idea. And I think all of that is really helpful in kind of framing, well, what if I do want to take the first step? So thank you for that. That was really great.
I also
Got
want to add, especially these days, I feel that everybody can be an entrepreneur because there's so many resources out there. Shopify, if you want to do e-commerce, they've made it very easy for somebody to start their own business. So I feel it's just really about, how you want to influence your own community and within your community as well.
love that. I love that. All right, we've got two kind of lighter questions for you to wrap it up.
Mhm.
First one is, what is the coolest opportunity you've gotten to experience because of your business or your entrepreneurship in general?
Good question. I would say so. Having learned about the fishing nets with fabric, I decide, and then also with my nonprofit organization, when I recently was with the students back in Kenya, we had gone on a trip and we had done a beach cleanup. And I think so, reading about ocean pollution or, you know, seeing documentaries about ocean pollution, I think, it's not as compelling as when you actually see it in person. So having seen that in person really inspired me to, you know, go get a scuba diving license. So I think that's one of the coolest things that came about with my entrepreneurship journey is going and getting my scuba diving license and be able to advocate for ocean pollution. Um, I would love to go scuba diving for the partner, the healthy seas that I mentioned about, and at some point would love to go and dive for them and pick up some of those fishing nets. But I think that would I would say would be the best opportunity I've had during my entrepreneurship journey. But also another part is I've been able to when I talked about collaborating with different people or women. So there was one particular girl that I collaborated with, and I had the opportunity to collaborate with a girl who entered um, America's Got Talent. So yeah, it's been really nice to get to know some of these women, also their stories, and learn about them and what their journeys were like. As well as there was also another girl who was a Guinness World Record for hula hoop dancing.
Oh wow.
So yeah. So a lot of women like that I've been able to interact and engage with, I think was also a great opportunity for me.
That's really
Yeah.
cool. It's really exciting.
Mhm.
What was the was it for hula hooping the longest?
Yeah, I think it was the hula hooping with multiple hoops at once.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
You
It's
have to
amazing. For anyone who doesn't know about hula hoop dancing, you definitely got to go look it up. We'll see if we can drop some links in the show notes. It's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe we can do a let's go hula hoop like group team building situation.
Activity.
Yeah, yeah, work that in there somehow. We'll see if it's in the budget. Um, I feel like you talked on this a little bit, J-Man, but we want to certainly circle back in terms of role models for entrepreneurship. Did you have any? I heard you talk a little bit about your parents being kind of your archetype of what it meant to uh have your own business and be self-sustaining. And so could you tell us a little bit about who some of your role models are from your past, your present, etc.?
I would say, besides my parents being one of my inspirations and role models, I feel that Oprah Winfrey has always been a huge motivation for me. I just love how she's very philanthropic when it comes to uh, everything that she does at the end of the day, giving back to community while also doing her business. So I think that's one. When it comes to fashion, I grew up watching Tyra Banks, America's Next Top Model. So what I really loved about Tyra Banks was, she was trying to change the fashion industry in the sense that, um, you know, bringing on curvy models, bringing on models who are 5'3" or 5 and under, things like that have really inspired me into, combining those kind of aspects into what I do as well.
Awesome. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for being on the podcast today, Jamin. I feel like I have learned so much about entrepreneurship and your journey. And I feel like we talked about this a fair amount before, and I learned so many new things. So thank you so much for your time. This was
Really.
wonderful. I
Yeah.
think you are going to inspire a lot of young people out there who want to try their hand at entrepreneurship and now have a much better idea of how to go about it. So thank you. Thank you for your persistence and your grit and all of the things that you've tried that have gotten you here today. It was a really inspiring story to hear and excited to see where it goes next, where you go on your incredible entrepreneurial journey from here.
Thank you both so much as well. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much. Really feel honored. And yeah, I'm excited to continue to change the world together.
Oh man, let's grow together.
Let's grow together.
Yes.
Yay.
Thanks, Jay, man. We appreciate you.
Yes.
All right, everybody, stay tuned for the next episode of Let's Grow Together and have a great time.